This is a video that is going to serve as some supplemental information for the lecture that I gave for the Michigan Parent Teacher Association conference in Southfield, Michigan. It's going to be the information that I gave on that day. And because we had to end shorter, we didn't have enough time to get done. It's going to include more information. So enjoy. In the video that I recorded on the day of the session, I unfortunately forgot to start it on time and cut off some of the biographical information about myself. As you can see by the introductory slide, my name is Royce Kennebrew. I am an educator who is a business owner that works with parents, that works with students, and works with educators. I also do diversity, equity, and inclusion for the federal government. So I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and went through the DPSCD, or the Detroit Public School, during the 70s, 80s, and graduated from Kettering High School, went on to the University of Iowa, and got a degree in English. I would come back to the city of Detroit and get a master's degree in education. And at the same time, I was periodically doing diversity, equity, and inclusion programming for federal agencies like the Department of Justice, National Institute of Health, like NASA, NSA, and different agencies of the sort, whether it be observational programs, Black History, MLK, or Women's History Month, LGBTQIA month, I think, which is in June. I would do programming to support those different agencies. They call them special emphasis programs, and those are programs that are to help those agencies create an environment where all of the employees feel comfortable. And I have been doing that since 2004 and still do it to this day. That you will find out that the conflict, whether it's somebody getting to an issue in Central Park, or at a Starbucks, or at a Walmart, or in the cubicle right next to you, or the person that ate your lunch out of the refrigerator, they are showing that they have low social and emotional learning core competency, right? And the success that I have had, I talk about in this book, and the lack of success. The reason why I was kicked out of Cass Tech, because at the time I was suffering from trauma of a mother who had mental illness. And when you have those type of ACEs, raise your hand if you're familiar with ACEs and what they are. We know what ACEs are? Adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences. And we're going to talk more about it. But I talk about that in this book, and how in my life I had a lot. And when I look back at my life now, knowing what I know, I'm so very happy to be here with you, Michigan PTA, because I had to do some grave dodging, as you will see in that book. And I'm not the only young African-American man, not too much young, not anymore, but I talk about when I was young, being able to dodge the pitfalls of growing up on the east side of Detroit. Okay. As a matter of fact, we have a kind colleague who's here from Southeastern. My dad lived right on Fairview. And when we used to ride our bikes from my house, from my mom's house to my dad's house, come by Southeastern all the time. And so, in the late 80s and early 90s, the type of atmosphere.
Very unsafe.
Very unsafe. Okay. Anybody heard of the series that comes on BMF or Snowfall? those days were the days that I grew up in, and thank God I made it. The first thing I want to tell you about social and emotional learning, there are 5 core competencies. And here's the reason. The reason why I'm here, I only do 2 things: social and emotional learning and diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the only thing I do in my life, period. Right? I'm always thinking in those terms. And I'm always looking to help people. Now, I'm going to tell you, from the beginning, I would love to come to one of your schools and talk to your parents, and talk to your students, and talk to your faculty there. But here's the thing about that. There's 130,930 schools in America, K through 12. And if I did one a day, it'll take me about 300 years to get through all the schools. I ain't going to make it, right? So what I like to do is give you as much information so you don't even need me. And if you want me to come in, great. But if I don't make it, that's fine, because I can't make it to them all anyway, right? And so I want to give you some strategies that on Monday you can use, even in the doctor's, in the ophthalmologist's office. You can use in Southeastern, that you can use in the work that you do right now on Monday. Right? Whether you work with our little adults or you work with our big adults. Okay? So, 5 core competencies. The first one is self-awareness. Right? Self-awareness. Self-awareness talks about your emotions. All right? Being able to understand your emotions, your self-confidence, your self-esteem. And we're going to go a little bit more into detail as well. Because it's going to be important. Right now, and I could say as an educator, the biggest issue that I have ever had with students is not necessarily their behavior, but it was dealing with their self-esteem. Because I heard a speaker say that you can only be as successful as the height of your self-esteem. And when you have low self-esteem, and right now I'm coaching, and let me tell you about the pandemic has done a job on our kids. And I wrote this book because, and it came out just this past summer, because right before when the pandemic was occurring, like when we were in the first shutdown, the March to April, May, I said to my friends who are in education still, I said, what are you guys doing special for the kids that are, when they come back in the fall? And I said, nothing. I started writing. I was like, oh my God, this is about to be hellish, right? And it hasn't stopped yet, because what our kids are dealing with is unaddressed trauma, right? It's unaddressed trauma. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it. But self-awareness is dealing with self-esteem. It's dealing with your self-confidence, and that's self-awareness. The other one is self-management. We've also heard the term self-regulation, right? When you have these powerful emotions like sadness, when you have these powerful emotions like anger, what is it that you do to mitigate? Like yesterday, I was in the store. I was shopping, and I'm just standing there waiting with my purchases. A guy comes in behind me who has a friend that's up there at the counter. He just goes in front of me, right? And he just gives me a obligatory hi. I'm sorry. No, if you're sorry, you would have stayed back there in the back. No, you're not sorry, first of all. Second of all, and then the cashier looked at me as to say, are you going to say something? Or you should say something? Or how dare he? And I just stood there like, because they're going to be conflict is normal. It's going to be conflict all over the place, all the time, every day. You're lucky if you don't have conflict every day. But the question is, and this is a second area of social and emotional learning, how are you going to regulate when you have the conflict and the powerful emotions? People aren't doing it well. Do you know that 10 to 14-year-old girls' suicide has gone up 51%? Right? Do you know that grades, for the first time in our country since they were taking record, have gone down in math and English? For the first time ever. Right? And I'm going to show you how the connection. So those are two. The first area is self-awareness. The second one is self-management. The other one is social awareness. Respecting others. Being empathetic and sympathetic to others. Respecting diversity. Guess what? Everyone in here might eat different breakfast food, right? We look different. We have different hair texture. We have different music likes. We wear different clothes. But we have a problem because people can't respect other people's diversity and their thoughts, right? I thought we had a First Amendment that gave you the freedom to have your opinion. It's okay, right? But that don't mean you punch somebody in the face or go to a Walmart and shoot it up or go to your job and shoot it up or go to a school and shoot it up or go to a post office and shoot it up. Right? Low social and emotional core competencies are at the foundation of all of these crazy things because people are not able to process these powerful emotions and their powerful opinions. Man, I got some strong opinions. And if you have opinions that are different than mine, I don't punch you in the face. It's okay. That's great. We talked about it. It's over with. We're good. Everybody can't do that. The next one is relationship skills. I'm with students every week. I'm with parents every week in the district that I'm working in. Every week. I did I think it was 13 student sessions this week, 2 parent students this week, sold 75 books this week to a school because it's the relationship skills that we're also having a problem with. I listened to NPR, and they were talking about how violence toward teachers and administrators has increased by parents. How parents, and one terrible story, a parent tried to run a assistant principal or principal over in the parking lot at dismissal or time because of this frustration, this anxiety. Everybody's anxious, right? And so relationship skills talks about how is it that you work with other people. Because that's important. When I talk to the kids, I ask them, what job do you want to do? And they tell me the doctor, they tell me the lawyer, they tell me the firefighter, they tell me all of this. I want to do nails, I want to do blah. I said, okay, now name which job where you will not work with other people. And they're like, no, work with people. One kid said, I was going to real estate. I said, okay, great. He said, you don't work with people in real estate. I said, who do you sell the houses to? You got to sell the houses to somebody, my man. You're not going to be in there by yourself. And the last one is responsible decision making. We got a lot of poor responsible decision making. And the thing about social and emotional learning is that it works for, if you didn't get it when you were young, you could still get it. All right? Don't be upset. All right, now, I hope this video that I'm about to play isn't too loud and I don't get shushed again. Okay. Can everybody hear that pretty good? And that's just coming out of there.
There's a lot of talk these days about SEL, social emotional learning. But what exactly is it? Social emotional learning is the process of learning social and emotional skills. And it's just as important as learning reading or math. This learning process is most effective when it begins early and continues through high school. Social emotional skills are essential for success in school, work, and life. With SEL, students learn to manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show caring concern for others, solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. Students learn to recognize what's happening inside them and to be aware of their emotions, which helps them deal with strong emotions and impulsive behaviors. It helps them stop, take a breath, and think about a situation before acting. Students learn to identify others' emotions and perspectives, which helps them empathize and show compassion, no matter who they are or what their background is. It's not difficult to imagine how this is important in the classroom and in life. Students learn to solve problems in peaceful ways and communicate assertively about what they need or want. This helps them get along with other students and get the help they need from adults. When students learn to make responsible decisions about their lives and their future, things can turn out better. Research shows social-emotional learning makes a difference. Students who participate in SEL do better academically, have improved attitudes and behaviors, and act in delinquent or disruptive ways less often. In the United States, students with strong social-emotional competence are twice as likely to earn a college degree and nearly 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by age 25. Just as important, students who are socially and emotionally competent have more friends. This means they're more likely to feel connected to school and do well, and less likely to be left out or bullied. Simply put, by participating in social-emotional learning, students learn the skills to succeed in every facet of school and the rest of their lives.
Does that sound valuable? It sounds valuable, right? And I'm not even gonna get into that part. All right. Let's see here. Now, the first one says SEL in my career in education. Before I even knew what social and emotional learning was, I was using it. Right? I went from teacher of the year to dean of students of a middle school to assistant principal and athletic director in 3 straight years. And I didn't know that I was using just a couple of the core competencies. One was relationship skills. The other one was responsible decision making. The other one was being sympathetic and empathetic to others. I made very strong relationships with my students and with parents. And it made me better at my job as an educator, as a teacher, right? It's building those strong relationships. And we'll talk about how it is that you can do that. So that helped me immensely. And then I talk about social emotional learning in action. I went to a school and did a presentation on social and emotional learning. There was a K through 8. They had 500 suspensions the previous year. 500. After my presentation, they had 300. A 40% decrease. Now ask yourself what happened in regards to academic achievement. Where did the test scores go up? Up or down? They went up. You know why? Because they got their instructional time back. And I'll just give you a little example. If you can improve the behavior of a student and stop them from wasting 5 minutes of the day. 5 minutes in one day, that equals out to about 25 minutes in a week, which equals about 100 minutes in a month, which equals about 1,000 minutes in a school year. A bad teacher can improve grades if you get 1,000 instructional minutes back, right? So that is what's so very important about social and emotional learning and how it impacts academic achievement, because it gets your social and emotional learning, it gets your instructional time back, and it helps test scores because you just get more instructional time. Now, this is what I want to give you. I want to give you something before we go on to the next video that I want to show you. I'm going to give you some special sauce right now. All right? That you can tell the teachers that you are with that in any area what you do, it's called unconditional positive regard, UPR, unconditional positive regard. What's unconditional positive regard, Royce? Unconditional positive regard is what you do at the break when you're milling around and you're talking to people. You're just talking to people regular. How you doing? What's going on? How's your family? Blah, 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 blah. But here's how it works with kids. It's a strategy called 10 to 2. These are for any person, for any child, but you use it in particular with your most challenging kids, because those are the ones that are burning your time. And what you do is you take 10 days straight of 2 interrupted minutes Hey Jimmy, how you doing? What you do last week? Oh, you went skating. Skating where at? Roller wheels. Did you bring your skates or did you rent the other skates? Really? Did you fall in? Right? 2 minutes every day. Now, I did professional development for a school outside of Flint. And I did it on a Wednesday, and I came back on the next Wednesday. Only 5 days had gone by. One of the teachers raised their hand and said, Royce, are you kidding me? The kid that I've been doing the 10 to 2 on, it's working already. It's only been 5 days, right? It's what? Building relationships. It's just building relationships. Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Care. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. All right? And that's what that does. Now, what I want to do, this next video is about 7 or 8 minutes. They're going to, if you were taking notes, each core competency, they're going to talk about self-awareness, they're going to talk about self-management, they're going to talk about social awareness, they're going to talk about relationship skills, and they're going to talk about responsible decision-making. They're going to give strategies for all 5. Right? They're going to give strategies for all 5. And if you write them down, those are going to be some strategies that you can take with you and you can use inside and outside of the classroom, and you can use at your house. All right? And we're going to talk about more of some stuff. And I'm going to show you how you can, while I'm thinking about it, there's a website. Anybody hip to castle.org? CASEL.org. Castle.org. CASEL.org. The Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, based in Chicago. They got a bunch of free stuff. And I'm going to show you how to use one of their things today to create a social and emotional plan that you can use anywhere. Anywhere, right? Create value. So let's take a look at this and get us some more strategies.
Social and emotional skills are the essential skills for success in school, work, and life. Social emotional learning centers their mind and body. It reduces their emotional tension so they can be open to new content and material. We find that academic outcomes increase exponentially when students are nurtured, loved, and cared for, that we get much more out of them when we first address social emotional needs. So for us, it's actually an academic intervention and not just an emotional one.
If we expect students to be college and career ready, it's important for us to focus on these skills and competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Self-awareness is the ability to identify your emotions, to be able to tie thoughts and feelings to behaviors.
We find that self-awareness is one of the hardest things for young people, being aware of their own body space and the impact of their words and emotions on other people. So a lot of the work we do is reflective, through conflict mediation, through circles, through journaling, having them see their own impact on the world, and then how to shift that or make a different choice next time.
Self-management is the ability to self-motivate, to have self-control, to regulate one's emotions.
In the classroom, that may be a breathing exercise, or that might be counting 5 or taking a break.
So with students who don't really know how to deal with their anger or don't really know how to resolve conflict, we're giving them a tool that helps them deal with it in a less stressful way.
Social awareness is about embracing diversity, showing empathy for others. Activities might include service learning projects, addressing social justice issues. Role-playing is a great opportunity for students to address how a person might have felt in a conflict on the playground.
We're going to see if other people have had some of the very same experiences around bullying that we've had.
You're in my boat if you have a bully now.
Well, I see a lot of people.
Relationship skills are important in project-based learning. is the ability to work cooperatively with someone to resolve conflict.
It's the one skill you need your whole life. You may not need calculus tomorrow, but you have to know how to work in a relationship, whether it's for a coworker or a life partner. You have to know how to handle conflict and how to handle challenges.
Sometimes at recess, Maya would come over and like just start talking about us and saying mean things.
Is it your job to make Danae's job at school hard?
I know it's a form of bullying, and sometimes I'll say sorry to her.
So you choose to be someone's ally and make a better choice.
Responsible decision making is considering the well-being for self and others. It's evaluating the consequences for various behaviors or actions. We do this through shared agreements, one-to-one problem solving, or having students debate an issue.
If you were like, hey, Kashida, can I, how much does an A cost in this class? And you like took out your wallet and, you know, and I was like, $50 would work. Which one of us would be corrupt in that case?
You're the one that's asking for the money.
We're truly teaching these students to be productive citizens. We're teaching them life skills. We're teaching them how to problem solve effectively. We're teaching them how to be resilient.
I think of all the billions of dollars we've spent.
All right, that's good, the 5 core competencies. But let me say this, and just let me zip to it real quick because we are running out of time. Oh man, I forgot. Now, these are the ACEs. Adverse childhood experiences. You're talking about things like poverty, neglect, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, poverty, community disruption, like violence, witnessing violence, alcoholism, all of those different things, right? And so make sure you put down ACEs, and if you're taking screenshots, definitely take that one. Also, there are symptoms from those that have numbers of ACEs, right? It is anxiety, managing anger, depression. It is, you can have some physical ailments like stomach aches, headaches, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough. And we believe, and all of the data is starting to come out, that the pandemic has been a super event, right? Because Garland Gilchrist, our lieutenant governor, said that he had 23 people to die because of the pandemic. Now, what's the number? It's like 37% of kids have about 2 ACEs, right? But if death of a loved one is an ACE, and you had 23 to die, you're talking about kids having 1,000% more ACEs than they did before the pandemic. And that's the problem, right? That's the problem. So let me go here because I definitely want to show you this. We're not going to be able to watch this video, but we're going to be able to work this out so that you do get this video. Now, this is what I want to go to because this is the last part. And this is a document that you can find on CASEL about social and emotional learning. Now, here's the deal. It has each area, and it has the different bullet points. For instance, under self-awareness, it says, oh my goodness, that is so small. Identifying emotions, other stuff, and sort of like at the eye doctor, going to the smallest one. So self-efficacy. So what you do to create for yourself is you go through, you look at each area, and you look at the bullet points, and you find activities and strategies that match that bullet point. And you try to do that with as many of the core areas and try to put them all in one day, or doing them as much as possible, right? With the self-awareness activities, self-management activities, social awareness activities, relationship activities, also responsible decision-making activities, all the time with your children, and guess what? With your coworkers. Because if your coworker steals somebody's lunch out the refrigerator, they're not empathetic and sympathetic to others. You know, your breath smelling like my lunch. That's not cool, right? And so those are the things. That's how you create one for yourself. There are over 200 plus different social and emotional learning curriculums, but I want to give you information because everybody here has a different issue. Everyone here has a different problem. Some have middle school kids, or some have elementary kids, or some work in a high school, right? And so you have to look at what your situation is, assess it, and then create strategies to address the problems that you're having. I'm going to give you another one that's secret sauce. Peer mediation. Peer mediation is secret sauce because it is a system that teaches kids to be able to work without you, to work their differences without you. That's a win because they're doing all of their fighting, cussing, slapping each other when you're not around, right? And so you want to teach them how to behave when you are not around. Yeah, when you are not around, right? Allow them to self-correct and to adjudicate their issues that they have in the lunchroom, on the playground, in the bathroom, right? Anybody ever heard of this game they play called 30 Seconds? Where they go to the bathroom, they just punch each other for 30 seconds. It's 60 seconds, 30 seconds, they just go. I said, how do y'all think that's fun? Ask Paul. Tell you that when I had Paul, they used to do that. I'm like, dude, somebody gonna get mad. I mean, in 30 seconds, the first guy, man, I don't know about the second guy, right? And so that is how, that's social and emotional learning. That's what it is now. As parents, let me say this, and then we're going to go into the raffle, and then we're going to end up. As parents, you have to, one of the things that they said, making the children feel safe, nurtured, respected, valued, all that good stuff. The anxiety of our children is through the roof. It's through the roof. Let me tell you again, it is through the roof. Whatever you can do, whether it is child-led activities, letting them order stuff at the store, let them pick where we're going to eat at, let them pick the clothes that they're going to wear, that will help them with their self-confidence and self-esteem. The breathing technique, 4-4-4 breathing technique, breathe in 4 beats, hold it for 4 beats, exhale for 4 beats. Navy SEALs use that breathing technique. And if you do it 6 to 9 cycles, it brings, if you're feeling depressed, it brings you up the baseline. If you are feeling really angry, it brings it down to the baseline. So, 4-4-4? Yeah. 4-4-4 is a breathing technique where you breathe it in for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you go through 6 to 9 cycles of doing that, it brings you up when you're not feeling good, up the baseline, and if you're angry, down the baseline. Okay? So that's all I got in this short time. Like when I do these, they're like either hour or 90 minutes or half days or stuff like that. So it's a lot to fit in. And I usually do go through like 20 or 30 slides. But when you only got 50 minutes, you can't do that much. So that was the end of our session. And at that time, I just did the raffle and took some questions. But what I want to do now is to go through the rest of the slides that we didn't have an opportunity to go into. And so what you see here, and I love using the Facebook emojis in my presentations. You have a discussion which talks about what do you do when you get angry. And we're talking about social and emotional learning, how it's a benefit to students. And so self-management is so immensely important. We talked about the breathing. We talked about the 4-4-4 breathing technique, but we didn't talk about issues like separating yourself from others and the other mental calisthenics actually that you can play. Name it to tame it, saying how you feel, and that helps you to get back control of your mind. Because what happens is when you get angry, you go into a situation where your amygdala hijacks your brain. It's the survival part of your brain hijacks the reasoning part of your brain. And when that happens, you aren't thinking clearly. But when you do one of the strategies called name it to tame it, you can better get back control of your mind and take yourself out of the survival process or that you are having in your mind. So the question then you ask yourself, what do you do when you get angry? And you have to put in strategies for yourself and teach your young people, whether they're your children, your nieces, nephews, or what have you, what are reasonable strategies to put in place when you get upset, because those things will help you not to get into trouble. And that's an important component, is that many students, when they get angry, they hit, they push, they fight, and things of that nature. And students have to understand that there has to be mechanisms that they control to help them participate in acceptable behavior at acceptable times. This slide is important, and it's in the first area of social and emotional learning, which is self-awareness. It was the slide that I was barely able to read because the print was too small. But self-esteem talks about your strengths. It talks about your weaknesses, talks about your self-efficacy, and that is your belief in your ability to complete tasks, your ability to do things, whether it's to do math or do social studies or fix your car or what have you. And in the context for young people, it's important because when you are able to identify your strengths, you then are able to build healthy self-esteem and self-confidence. And as I spoke about in the session, that when young people do not know what they do well, then and that has not been fostered in them, that they do have a gift, skill, or talent that is extraordinary, more in many cases more than one, that is extraordinary. And that is some of the ways that you can build healthy self-esteem. And so in this slide, I just asked the question, what are your strengths? Are you working with young people, working with your children, your nieces, your nephew, the people in your Sunday school Bible study, or what have you? What are your strengths? What do you do well? What are some things? And the knowledge of those things helps to build healthy self-esteem and self-confidence. And so affirmations, as it says in the slide, we slide into, if you have weaknesses that you know of, you say to yourself, I can do math. I can do social studies. I can have a good conversation. I can have good relationships. I'm a good person. I like myself. I love myself. Those are what affirmations are. And we should teach our young people how to use them to impact their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-worth, their self-efficacy. This next slide is really so important to me because it helps young people, it helps adults and young people to be self-reflective. And these are two powerful questions that you can teach young people to use and adults to use all the time to control how it is they're feeling. And those two questions are, how am I feeling and why am I feeling this way? And I always like to use the story of when I was getting out of my car my truck in the driveway of my house, and I heard this sound. And as I'm looking at my truck, not knowing what that sound was, I can see the back starting to go down. And so I got a flat right in coming into my driveway. And immediately I felt myself getting upset. I felt myself getting mad. I felt myself getting just frustrated. But then what I had to do after I asked myself, why am I upset? How am I feeling? And why am I feeling that way? And I had to go through and I started to talk to myself. I said, it's not your fault that you got a flat tire. It's not your fault that you drove over something that made your tire flat. You couldn't see it. It wasn't your fault. And then I started to think about why I was grateful at that moment. And I said, you better be glad that you have a full set of tires downstairs at your house. You better be glad that you're not on the side of the road or that you're on a freeway somewhere. You better be glad it isn't too hot. You better be glad it isn't too cold. You better be glad it's daytime. You better be glad all of these different reasons why I should be glad and be grateful. And all of a sudden, my emotion, how I was feeling started to change. And so when you ask yourself how you are feeling, why you are feeling that way, you use the name it to tame it. And then after you use the name it to tame it, then you start going into this idea of gratitude. Even though this isn't a perfect situation, what's the bright side? What's the silver lining? And that is very, very powerful for adults and in particular children so that they don't get depressed. In the presentation, I talked about the increase of suicide in girls, but it's not just suicide. It's also depression. It's also mental health issues. I think over 40% of kids have some type of mental health challenge during the year, and upwards of 20% of young people have a serious mental health challenge. And so these mental strategies they can use to help themselves regulate what they're feeling, and then because of how they are feeling, how they then will behave. Parents, you are definitely going to not like this next slide. And this next slide is organization and staying organized in social and emotional learning. The self-management also includes organization and staying organized. And so that is a huge issue when you're talking about young people and how it can impact the trauma, the inappropriate behavior, all of those different things. Organization is a huge, huge problem with young people, and social and emotional learning discusses it. And so I talk about organization in regards to your desk, your locker, your house, all of those different areas that you can that students deal with all the time. Organization of your folder. Let me tell you, as a former 4th grade and 5th grade, 7th grade and 8th grade teacher, as the dean of students, as an assistant principal, athletic director, as a coach of many different teams, kids are so unorganized, and it's because they haven't been taught how to be organized. So it is really, really important, I think, for adults to teach young people how to be organized, especially in all those areas that are mentioned here on this slide. Because I can remember standing at the door. So when kids come by me at dismissal to collect their paper, and some kids, between the time that they got up from their desk to the time they got to me, would lose their work. Like in 15 steps, somewhere in the desk or in their folder or in their pocket or in their somewhere, and they would lose it. And so it is so important to teach them how to be organized in all of those different areas, how to be organized at home. Wouldn't that be amazing, parents and people who have young people around. But you got to show them how to do it. And one of the problems why people, and particular kids, don't know how to do stuff is because they haven't been shown how to do it. So organization is incredibly important, and it will help with the trauma. It will help deal with anxiety. The more organized you are, the less anxiety you will have. This slide is awesome because it talks about this goal setting acronym, which is called SMART goal setting, where you see specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Goal setting has been proven for those that write their goals down and participate in goal setting, that they are more likely to attain the goals that they have set. They did a study of those that write down their New Year's resolution. And those that wrote down their New Year's resolution were much, much, much more likely to achieve those desired goals that they had written down. And so there's research to back up this the importance of goal setting. But this in particular, SMART goal setting is a systematic way to set your goals, and they should set goals, young people and adults, for everything. Being specific. Do you want to be a good student? And that's good. That, for instance, that can be a goal. And being measurable. Now, what does it look like to be a good student? How can you measure that? By your grades, by your not being suspended? Absolutely. And so you would say, being a good student, I'm going to use my discipline, and I'll use my grades and my score in my classes, and B will be considered a score of 85 in each class will be considered me reaching that goal. So it has to be measurable. You can't say, I just want to be a good student, or I just want to get good grades. What exactly do you mean when you say good grades? Also, attainable. And so what that basically means is that it's something that you can really do. Like, I can have a goal of being a fast runner, but saying that I want to run the mile in 3 minutes is not attainable. No human has ever run the mile in 3 minutes. So that's not attainable. Relevant, something that is important for your particular life, and timely. For instance, I have been a track coach on many instances, and a timely goal for me, saying I want to say, for instance, I want to win the high school track and field championship. That championship happens the first weekend in June every year. And so I know that I should be working toward that goal, where if I am able to attain it, it's going to happen on that particular day. So being timely means putting start dates and end dates for your particular goal. And that is going to help young people and adults be much, much more productive. This is absolutely secret sauce. Working from a list has changed my life in really dramatic and drastic ways. And I talk about it in my book, The Ghetto Grave Dodger, How Social and Emotional Learning Can Address Trauma, how it can address trauma, decrease violence, and improve struggling schools. And I talk about it in my book in relationship to my life. I didn't realize that most likely I had ADHD. Most likely I would have been referred for special education services. I took a test when I was getting my master's in education in a class called Education and the Exceptional Learner. And it was a class that talked about special needs students. And I took this a referral assessment. And I had 19 out of the 20 identifiers for ADHD, and I would have been referred for special ed services if I had to take that test when I was in school. But I never took tests like that because I never was a behavior issue, right? And I always got good grades. But guess what? You can have ADHD and still have good grades, like I did all my life. I just had problems with focusing. And so how this benefits me and others, and you're talking about addressing trauma and dealing with anxiety and dealing with depression and all of those things. Lists help you be more organized. And I'd talk about having to-do lists for a day, to-do lists for a week, to-do lists for a month, and having yearly goals that you set and that you work toward every day. That's how you achieve the goals. So what I would do is I would write down my goals for the week. And every day, the night before, I would write down in a loose leaf paper, in a notebook, the most important things that I had to get done in a day, whether the list was 3, whether the list was 12, whether it was 15. And I would organize that list. What I would do would be, what one thing is the most important thing on this list? And then I would put it at the top. And then I would go, what is the second most important thing on this list? And I would use what's called the Pareto principle, which is the 20-80 or the 80-20 rule, is that 20% of your efforts give you 80% of your results. So I will always identify the most important things and do them first, because they are the things that will usually give you the most bang for your buck. But unfortunately, what we are taught to do is to do things that are easy, but they have little to no benefits, and to do the hard things last. And usually it's the hard things that give us the most benefits. But using working from a list. And I also have, for the visual learners, I have 2 whiteboards that are in my bedroom. One has a calendar on it. One is just a straight whiteboard. And I write my to-do list in a notebook and I write it on the whiteboard. And then my events that I have, where I have to speak and things of that nature, I put it on my monthly whiteboard calendar so I can actually visualize it and see it. And that has made so much difference and benefit. And it helps with anxiety big time. We did talk about the unconditional positive regard, but this is the golden rule, and this is in social awareness, having respect and diversity. Having respect and sympathy and empathy for other people, especially those who are different than ourselves. And so in this particular slide, which is called the golden rule, and it's just do unto others as you will have them do unto you. When you think about the things that are important to you, in regards to how you like to be treated, how you like to be talked to, how you like to be addressed, people using your name correctly. All of those things are very, very important. And so this slide talks about the golden rule, because it talks about, really think about what it is that you say to people and be reflective of what you say and what you do, and teach children this. Because if you look at many of the things that I talked about in the session, or if you look at the news in regards to all of the different violent tragedies that are happening, if we would have taught children how to be sympathetic and empathetic to other people and other children early in their life, and made that a practice that they did for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and by the time they become adults, then they are very attuned and very adept at thinking about other people's needs, their concerns, their issues, their problems, and how they are treated, and respecting other people. And many of these tragedies that we have occurring, major and minor, will decrease and cease to exist. So using this the idea of the golden rule, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, is so powerful. And you're talking about social awareness and relationship skills and social and emotional learning. You know, this is maybe for me as a educator, communication is so vitally important. And when you're talking about addressing trauma, decreasing violence, and improving academic achievement, which is a session that I talked about for Michigan PTA, was focusing on when you're talking about decreasing inappropriate behavior, decreasing violence, communication is really vital. You know, just using a person's name. Oh, Royce, I'm sorry about that. It can be very powerful to listen and then respond. We have so many times that people want to speak and they don't want to listen. So I always say, listen or listen to understand before you want to be understood. And so what that does is it allows you to get an understanding. Because like I said in the session, that conflict is normal. But how is it that you deal with it? And communication is the key, because you get a chance to understand what people are thinking and what they're feeling. We should ask these questions all the time. And like I said in the session, I may not have asked, no, it wasn't in your session, but it was a session when I was at a school, as I asked that we always ask young people and other people when they come out of school, what did you learn today? And that's a great question. And I'm not saying to stop asking that, but I think that as parents and also child care givers, we should ask the question, how did you feel today? Was there any time that you got upset? Was there any time that you got mad? And also use and teach your children to use, and other adults to use that type of probing questions so that we understand how other people feel. That can decrease a lot of the conflict. That can decrease a lot of the violence that occurs inside and outside of our schools. If people will communicate, I don't like that. I don't like when you say that. I don't like when you do that. And then people govern themselves accordingly based on what you said you don't like or what you don't do. And so communication is so vitally important in all of those ways. Stephen Covey talks about it in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that communication, you should be looking for win-win situation. Too many times people say it's either my way or the highway. So use communication to look for situations where it fits both parties. And so communication is so vitally important. So, you know, I write down so many things. And so journaling is, as we talk about increasing academic achievement and dealing with violent behavior, inappropriate behavior, and addressing trauma, it is important to be reflective. That's the main key about all of those things that our session that we were dealing with wants to talk about. And so what I do is I write all the time, and that young people and adults should reflect on their day, reflect on what was successful, reflect on what wasn't successful, so they can think about how is it that they can improve those interaction with people and different events all the time. That's why journaling is so vitally important, and it should be used with young people and adults. So I want to end up this video. As you can see, we are getting close toward an hour, about an extra 20 minutes of slides that I wanted to show you at the session there out in Southfield. And I want to end with talking about why my book is so important, because it is the world's first social and emotional learning autobiography. In my research of my literature, I did not see any other autobiographies that talked about social and emotional learning. And so mine is the first. And that's important because it uses the autobiography, it uses stories to talk about how to use social and emotional learning, the self-awareness, the self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. And it talks about stories about bullying. It talks about stories about how to improve low self-esteem. It talks about stories on how communication and unconditional positive regard are so beneficial to the success of a person's life. And I use those stories to really elucidate how important social and emotional learning skills are. As I talked about in a session, how building the unconditional positive regard and having those strong relationships, and also managing myself as an educator, as a teacher, as a trainer. I tell kids and adults several stories in the book on how when things were going well for me, it was because I was managing myself well. And when things weren't going well for me, it's when I wasn't managing myself well and using those different strategies that I talked about in our session in social and emotional learning. So what I want you to do is think about buying this book for a loved one, for your parents, for your students, for your teachers, so that they can understand what students are dealing with that they teach, so they can be more compassionate and sympathetic and empathetic to the concerns of their students. It is a great teaching tool that I think every teacher, every parent, and every student should read. And you can get in contact with me by my name, ROYCEKINNIEBREW @gmail.com. Well, I thank you for taking some time to listen and watch this video. And we hope to see you and talk to you soon.